Yes, as we continue in our Enlightenment series in this critical period, we come today with explanations around the subject of whether the president can change the constitution, because that's the a whole number of people are calling Ninas to say, oh, when this good man comes, when that one comes, they will change the constitution, particularly the ones who are doing the PVC revolution. They say, oh, let our man get there, he will change the constitution. Honestly, they genuinely think that a president that wants to can go and change constitution. So this broadcast is to break it down, to let them know that it is not so. It is not within the powers of a president to change constitution in the manner they are imagining. Only in the military era can a military president draft whatever law he wants and bring it up by decree. But in the civil dispensation, in the democracy we seek to be, in the civil dispensation we have, no president goes to change any constitution. The power to make constitution, not even the National Assembly, not the president plus the National Assembly working together, can resolve the question of the dispute that has arisen around the 1999 constitution, because the central question is that we have not made any constitution, contrary to the claim in the preamble to that constitution that we, the people, have solemnly resolved to live in unity and therefore have made and given unto ourselves that constitution. To tell you the nature of the problem, such that the president and the National Assembly cannot be the ones to go to solve it for us. If you go to, even by the admission of section 14.2a of that same 1999 constitution, you will see that it says that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. I repeat, and I'm quoting section 14.2a of the constitution. It says, sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. That is a universal truism. That constitution, as bad as it is, as fraudulent as it is, at least admits that truism, that sovereignty belongs to the Ijo, to the Yoruba, to the Igbo, to the Tiv, to the Berom, to the Langtang. These are the people that own the land, the sovereignties that will be, integrated and consolidated into a political union. And so that sovereignty belongs to them, and it is from them that the government will be constituted, the union will be constituted, and the powers that will be exercised by the managers of the government of the union defined by those owners. And so you come from that section 14.2a to the preamble of the constitution, the preamble that says that we, the people, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible entity and indissoluble, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. It is in the pretense that the Ijo, the Ogoni, the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Tiv, the Berom have all sat together and agreed to be one political union, and having so agreed, have then gone ahead to write the articles of their union that you now call constitution. Constitution is in the second layer. The principal thing is whether the constituent components that own the sovereignties have agreed to be in union. And so, to tell you what is now wrong with our own situation, Decree number 24 by which that constitution was imposed in 1999 by Absalom Abaka, tells the story of how they came about the constitution. They said they formed a committee called Constitution Debate Coordinating Committee, headed by Nikki Toby, that went around to hotels and talked to people they found in beer parlors, and came back to the Supreme Council of Absalom Abaka, who then received the report. These are things in black and white inside the 1999 Constitution. We are not we're not pointing to the sky for the source of our position. Our position is taken from the story of the authors of 1999 Constitution as printed inside the 1999 Constitution, gazetted. That's what the whole world has as our Constitution. It tells that story and then says that the Supreme Military Council adopted that report subject to the amendments, that is, they added and subtracted as they deemed fit, and called that report 1999 Constitution, attached as schedule to that decree to become the Constitution of Nigeria. And so when you look at that that story as printed inside that Constitution, for how the authors of that Constitution came about the Constitution, and you compare it with the lies in the preamble to the Constitution that says that we the people have agreed to be in union and have written this Constitution to govern our union, then you go back to 1428 that says that it's we, the owners of the sovereignty, that have the exclusive authority to make a Constitution. You will then see that it's all a lie. Particularly looking again at that decree number 24, it has only 2 sections. In the first, in the subsection 3 of section 1, there was an instruction written by the authors of that decree about that truth of how the Constitution came not to be printed in the Constitution that will be printed. So that instruction was there that the story of the truth should be deleted, so that the falsehood that we the people have agreed will stand alone. But Providence intervened for us, and they printed everything. The federal government printed everything together. And that was the basis of our engagement with this 1999 Constitution. From the time it was first introduced in 1999, we said our sovereignty cannot be confiscated by a few elements, soldiers working for whatever interest. We would take back our sovereignty and go to a meeting to decide whether we want to be in union, and if we agree, by referendum. It's only by referendum that we can commit 60 million Yoruba people into being a union. If they vote that they don't want to be in union with people who are doing all kinds of things, killing people all over the place, that's the end of the process. The same thing with the eastern part, the same thing with the middle belt. It is by our own, the power to make constitution is called constituent powers. The National Assembly does not have constituent powers. Their powers is to make law according to constitution we make. We have not made any constitution. So the National Assembly that is sitting in Abuja doing all kinds of things, particularly one they call constitutional amendment, they are doing so in negation of our sovereignty. They are doing so in defiance of our sovereignty. They are doing so in compoundment of the treason initiated by Absalom Agbaka and his confederates in the Supreme Military Council or Armed Forces Ruling Council, whatever it was called at the time, in 1999. And so the reason we are making this broadcast now is to tell those who think that if any one of these 3 candidates win the election, that the Constitution, he will then go and change Constitution, particularly the followers of the PVC revolution and the obedient group. Some of them are even calling out to say, you guys have done all this work. Just let us work together. Once Peter gets there, he will change the Constitution. No, the process of changing Constitution cannot be undertaken the day after election, because you will then tell us, the candidates must come to tell us now how they are going to, and perhaps we should even touch on some of the things that are clearly beyond, so everybody can understand why we say they will not do it. Quite apart from the fact that the authority of the president is for executive authorities to do what the law says should be done. The authority to make law is in the legislative branch, that's the National Assembly. And that authority does not extend to constitution making. We already talked about what it takes to make constitution. It is those who could have been countries of their own that gather to make constitution, because they decide 2 things as they gather, that they will be one union. That's when they've negotiated. And when they've decided to be one union, they will then go and write the articles for that one union. And therefore, if we are saying we have not made the 1999 constitution. We are saying we have not agreed to be one union. We are saying we have not drafted any agreement to govern that union. There are two different subject matters. And if anybody is telling anybody that a president will come and by fiat resolve those two without going back to the owners of the sovereignty, the owners of the sovereignty are saying they don't have a union. That's the summary of all this union dispute, these constitutional grievances we are talking about. The people who say they want Odua nation now, or Biafra now, or resource control now, they are saying we've not committed our land and our people into this union. That's the summary of what they are saying. And so if you think that it's by election, go and bring one new person to become president, then he would decree that all of you are now here. Or how is he going to do it? If he calls the meeting that has to be called, the first question that will have to be decided is whether we're in union or not. Because if you put our signature on a document we never knew anything about, that document is a forgery. And we went to court in 2007 to say we can't carry on with this. Look at some of the things that the president is a president that comes through election cannot touch. Quite apart from the general position of a National Assembly not having constituent powers to make constitution. They can make law, they cannot make constitution. If any lawyer, whether it's professor of law or senior advocate, is telling you that National Assembly is the one to make constitution for him, tell that lawyer that Tony Nadi said he's illiterate on the subject matter, that is a mediocre, and that is lying to himself. If he does not know, he should go and learn. Constitution making is not for National Assembly. Neither does the president. He can only initiate it. He can only take executive actions to invite the owners of the sovereignty to a meeting, like South Africa did in the CODESA. Frederick de Klerk called a meeting of the owners of the land, which was titled CODESA. And it took them 5 years from the time they were summoned. The government of the time became a transitional government with limited powers to commit the society to any future, they became a nominal government to manage the day-to-day running of the union. And so that's where we have arrived at this time. And if you consider what has to change concerning that preamble alone, how will the claim that we the people have solemnly resolved, that's the constituent components of Nigeria that are now eager to leave the union, how will a president after the election in 2023, on which day is he going to call that meeting in which the Yoruba will be sitting with the Ijaw and the Ogoni to say, okay, we have now agreed, and it's not by any other means than referendum? Why don't we do it now before we go to that election? How is he going to resolve the question of 36 states that we are saying we came from a union of 4 autonomous regions that owned their assets, that had constitutions, that defined powers, that donated powers to this central government, which they call the federal government, upturned into a unitary system with 36 states now that have now made the majority in the land political minority in the place of decision making and sharing in Abuja. How will a new president be able to resolve that without dismantling the 36 states? What is he going to tell the governors that will have emerged from that same election? What is he going to tell the senators that will come from everywhere to Abuja to get their own share of the national cake from that election? How is he going to address the provisions of that constitution that create all these problems, which will then be in the hands of the people in the National Assembly benefiting from it to change? The provisions creating corruption, for instance, the beneficiaries of corruption will not be eager to go and say, let us block it all. The president does not have the power to block it. He cannot add one alphabet or remove from that constitution. He is limited in that regard. So if anybody is trying to tell anybody that he's going to do that, I've already talked about the first thing, the second thing, the third thing that he cannot do. I mean, we can see that it's not possible for him to now come and say, gentlemen, we have a problem. We don't have a union anymore. Let the owners of the various parts of Nigeria come, let us start afresh. Is he going to declare himself a transitional government or what? When all these years as candidate, as somebody who is aspiring to go to public office under this constitution, he has already sworn as governor. The one that was Atiku, that was vice president, had already sworn as under this same constitution as vice president to defend and uphold. He's planning to go to swear again. The other one of APC had already sworn at the time he was governor in Lagos to defend and uphold. So if in all these years they've not joined that conversation of how we're going to get rid of this constitution, and they tend to persuade us that if they become president, any one of them that becomes president will now come and say he will do it. We are telling the public now that neither the APC, the PDP, nor the Labour Party is going to be able to address that question of that constitution when they get there after the election. The situation is simply untenable. I mean, that promise is a deceit on the surface. If they want to do it, this is the time to do it. It's not after they swear to defend and uphold that constitution as condition for taking office that they're going to now call a meeting of everybody to say, hey, gentlemen, we don't have anything to do anymore. You know, so those are the things. The 68 items of exclusive list. If anybody thinks the president will now come and say, okay, all of you can go and carry arms, when the constitution says you cannot, only the federal government can. Or is he going to say, okay, Niger Delta, take back your oil and gas without calling the constitution say it belongs to federal government. The port of Lagos belongs to federal government. The bitumen of Ondo belongs to federal government. The limestone of Benue belongs under that constitution. INEC, that conducts all the elections, federal and state, is a matter for Abuja. Is the president going to say, okay, no more INEC. Everybody go and elect who you want and bring to us, like it's supposed to be in a federation? So if we can't, he can't touch the matter of security, police, and arms and ammunition that are on that exclusive list, the president is not in any position to say, let it be otherwise. It is only when that thing changes in that constitution. The National Assembly is not able to do it because they are the ones who, the power to change those things go back to the people who own the power, goes back to the constituent components of the union, that they are the ones with the exclusive right to make the contents of the constitution out among themselves by negotiation. Are we going to be a federal union or a unitary union? Do we want to be in union at all? That's the first question. What degree of autonomy will be acceptable to us? Only them can decide, not their agents. Because the government, including the National Assembly, like the management team, elected, what do they call how you hire your staff and fire? Election is the hiring and firing process for that management team. The owners of the enterprise remain the constituent components, and their sovereignty remains with them. They may donate some of the powers to have a union office so that everybody doesn't go to form their currency, their army, and all kinds of things. That's what a federation is supposed to be, but we have ceased to be a federation. And people are coming to tell us that it's by them going to government house that everything will change. No, we say, let us stop now and solve the problem, because as you go to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, you are enabling and empowering those, reinforcing the constitution and enabling those who are standing on it to invade the rest of us, because they tie our hands to the back and hold on to our economic assets. You are just making you are making the task impossible. If that is all you want to do, you say you want to go and win power so that you can go and it's not within the powers of the president to do any of these things. Anybody who is hoping that it is by A or B or C emerging as president that those things are going to change, you are going to find out you didn't know what you were saying. Ninas is saying authoritatively at this time that the way to solve those problems is to stop the journey to the election, dismantle that constitution, and go into transition. It's not the election that we need now. In a recent broadcast, we had taken these items one after the other to say, is it the system that has to change or the personnel? We all agree it is the system. If it is the system, is it by election or by going to transition now that we change? It's simply, the logic of it is that it is by going to transition that we can go and rework the system. Going to transition, forget about whatever the 4 years and 10 years that the constitution say people should govern. We don't have a union under this disputed constitution. And people are going to go unilateral. People are being slaughtered all over the place. They are not going to fold their arms because Absalom Abaka wrote one fraudulent document in 1999. They are going to take their sovereignties, and they are going to just do whatever they can to prevent themselves from being killed in their space. They are going to do whatever they can to prevent people who have seized their assets over how many years? For close to 50 years, from continuing in the forceful confiscation of their assets, whether it's oil and gas or ports or all the other economic assets confiscated by that constitution. They're not going to say they can't police themselves because somebody wrote it there. So let us please listen now. Let us accept that if it is system that will change, that it is by going to transition that system will change. It's not by going to election. If we go to election, it will be compounded. We already talked about how it happened in the early 60s, 61, 62, that became 65. It happened again in 93, that became what we saw, that resulted in 1999. We're again going to the same cycle of going to election under a disputed constitution. We can do better than that. Let us listen to ourselves and solve this problem before it becomes an inferno. Thank you.